Welcome back. I hope those of you who joined the breakout sessions found that an interesting alternative to the usual queue for the coffee. Now it's time for us to take another look at the challenges and opportunities ahead. This time with an emphasis on the changing role of real estate. During my working life, I've witnessed remarkable changes in the design, ownership, operation, and use of commercial property, driven by all sorts of social, economic, and technological factors. Will COVID change the direction we were heading in, or will it accelerate the speed of change? I'm hoping our next speaker will tell us. He's the author of the excellent RICS publication, The Age of Unreal Estate, which I commend to you all as a thought-provoking read. He's also principal of Ramidus Consulting Limited, and he's here now. Please welcome Dr. Robert Harris.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Rob Harris from Ramidus Consulting, and I want to talk to you today about what I call the shifting priorities and the age of unreal estate. Now, much has been written over the recent times about future work styles and working patterns and how people will be adapting in a post-COVID world in the office workplace. But very little has been spoken and said about the supply process. And that's what I'm really going to talk about today, because I believe that within the supply process, there are changes taking place which have more profound implications than COVID does for the way we work and our work styles. So much so that I think the paths of consumption of real estate and supply of real estate have been on separate paths for a number of years. And I think we've now reached an inflection point where people and society are looking for something different from real estate. In other words, they're not looking for more of the same, but they're looking for something different. So how will we move from building more to building better? Well, I think the first thing to say is that we need a new model of provision. In the old model, builders build, investors buy, architects design, brokers book trade. Simple. Everybody knows what they're doing. It's a century-old model. What on earth could go wrong? Well, for much of the 20th century, the model worked quite well, actually. But in the digital era, it's been shown up to be somewhat of a one-size-fits-all model. And also, it's been resistant to change. There's a level of ossification which has taken place, which means that there is resistance and friction to change in the process, which works against innovation and ultimately works against the interests of the customer. And the symptoms of this are that buildings are being built as architectural masterpieces, they've been built as corporate statements of power, they've been built as capital investments, they've been built as income earners, but they've not been built and designed or managed as operational resources in the main. The customer, I beg your pardon, in the process is secondary. And what real estate needs, in my view, is something of a Copernican revolution. And that's Nicholas Copernicus in the diagram there. And he was the chap who postulated, firstly, that the sun sat at the center of the universe, not the earth. And he placed the earth in its infinitesimally small place where on the fringes of the universe, rather than at the center. And we need to think about real estate in the same sense. We need to get to the point where we can put the customer at the center of our process. One of the issues here is that real estate is riven and has been for decades by fragmentation. These are just a few magazine covers, but there are three generic groups. There's design, there's delivery, and there's management. I know that most of you out there today are involved with management. And each of these tribes has its own labyrinthine silos of activity, each with their own practices and their own arcane lexicon. The real estate process is focused on the delivery of fragmented technical skills rather than offering a customer-facing management function. The problem is that many of those technical skills are being automated and commoditized. And the system itself defeats the presentation of a coherent industry to customers. The maze itself, the maze of intricacies, creates inefficiencies, which means costs, and inconsistent approaches. And there's a transactional culture, rather than one based on genuine B2B, business-to-business relationships. And the separate silos themselves, they create hierarchies and turf wars, not to mention reinforcement of cultural differences. And it's helpful also to put today's supply process into a longer term perspective. this is a very simple diagram describing what I call the 5 ages of the office, 2 of which perhaps are most important here, the last 2. The digital era, which we've had since the 1980s when the computer came to the office digitized. We all began to use and manage offices in a different way. And I believe we're now moving from 2020 onwards into what I call the network office, which requires a different approach. And the way I caricature this is to suggest that we need to change our mindsets from when we're building and managing castles to when we're building and managing condominiums. It's a whole different mindset. Because outside the real estate bubble, we have this fragmented delivery of technical skills rather than offering the customer-facing management function. In the economy, we've had the emergence of the knowledge economy with rapid change and contingent workers and the growth of SMEs. Business itself has seen its corporate priorities changing rapidly in response to economic change. Technology is decimating the skill base of many real estate traditional skills. And from a social perspective, experience and well-being are shifting up the agenda now. And I don't think I need to talk to anybody about environmental issues. Again, those pressures and drivers are encapsulated in this diagram here, where we talk about the economy, business, technology, social and environmental pressures, and how they feed through drivers specific to real estate implications. So real estate needs to become what I call socially relevant. It cannot remain immune from the technological, social, economic, and environmental changes that are taking place all around us. Real estate has to be an agent of change, not a bystander or an observer. And this means that old attitudes and perceptions have got to change. Clinging on to the way we've always done things is not tenable. And the built environment professionals must learn and adapt to remain relevant to customers, to politicians, and to society. Investors, occupiers, FMs, asset managers, designers, everybody involved in that process will be affected by the changes. And so there's a common interest in ensuring that everybody together remains relevant in that sense. So how do we conceptualize this relevance? Well, I'm sure most of you will be aware of Abraham Maslow, who created his hierarchy of needs. Now, I am aware, of course, that there's some controversy about whether or not he presented his findings in a triangle or not, but I do find it a very helpful and a visual model for getting a strong message across. So I've kept with it here. Now, this is Maslow's hierarchy of requirements, moving from the basic physiological through safety, through love and emotion, to a sense of esteem, and eventually self-actualization. And self-actualization in this context, from Maslow, describes as a desire to accomplish everything one can and to become the most that one can be. Now, you might say to me, what's that got to do with real estate, Rob? Well, I believe we can translate those levels of need into real estate. And I've given a mirror image here of Maslow's triangle. And my mirror image reflects on the base here, compliance in buildings. Then we have functionality in buildings. And there's an economic dimension to buildings in terms of rent and costs. All these things we've been doing very well for years and years and years and getting better at them all the time. We then get in vaguer areas, newer areas, more novel areas, such as responsibility in terms of corporate social responsibility, the environment and so on. Space as a productive asset, as a productive tool of business. And finally, workplace as a stimulating environment. So I think we can translate Maslow's broad messages into a real estate story. But there's something to add to this, I think, and that is to ask where the value is. Where are we adding most value in my socially responsible real estate model? Well, to do that, we need to turn Maslow's model literally upside down. Because whilst compliance and functionality are absolutely critical to any building's life cycle, they don't add value, not anymore, not in a modern knowledge weightless economy. Where we add value is in the what is now the higher slices of that triangle: responsibility, productivity, and stimulation. Because if we can make people more stimulated, more productive, we're adding so much more value than we ever were through making sure our buildings were compliant. So I think this is a tremendous way of conveying how we need to invert real estate's priorities and make it more socially relevant, as I say. And once we accept that model, then we also need to see real estate more as a commodity, because we are now operating in a largely weightless economy. And in that sense, real estate itself is becoming weightless. Hence my subtitle here about the message about unreal estate. So the diagrams here, the one on the left, it shows levels of service provision in the flexible space market, starred like hotels. And the diagram on the right shows how we need to think about buildings, not so much in stuffing a few tenants into a multi-let building, but in terms of creating buildings which themselves are multi-use environments, and really rethinking how we deliver and manage real estate, which has profound implications for the FM industry. So the message here is that we're moving from castles to condominiums, from product to service, and we will have hybrid space, not monoculture space as a result of that. So the question is then, what must happen to allow that to take place? Well, there are six. I've got 6 suggestions here. There are many more, I'm sure, but there are 6 to get us off the ground. The first is that real estate must become customer-centric. This is one of the most important challenges ahead, to place the customer at the center of the industry rather than as a secondary consideration to an investment decision. That's the business-to-business piece. The second is then that we must make real estate a people-centric industry. So this is about the people that occupy the buildings we build and manage for them. And this is where we have to enable people in their work and to allow them to stimulate and experience the work environment in a different kind of way. So today's real estate must focus on the user experience, not the asset management in that sense. I think also real estate has a particularly important role in terms of social equity. We've seen, for example, during the COVID crisis, how different modes of working have affected different demographics in different ways. And for certain kinds of people, working from home is a great thing. For others, it's an awful thing. And we need to make sure that real estate does not react in a knee-jerk way to the health crisis and create a kind of environment that makes workplace even less equal. In my work time over the last 3 decades, workplace has been the great leveler. We've moved from hierarchies of space to a more generic kind of space in which even the most senior people occupy pretty much the same place and use the same tools and services as the juniors. And I think that's a great thing that's happened. We need to encourage that further still. Responsible real estate. This is the whole sustainable piece. We need to urgently align the industry with the climate emergency agenda. I know there are great things going on in this area, so I don't want to labor this particular point, simply to recognize that it is part of this package of changes that need to take place. Fifthly, we need to regard real estate as a resource. It's a factor of production. It's little different to labor and capital. The old world language of asset management must change. For most occupiers, most of the time, real estate is not an asset. It's a liability that has to be managed. It's only an asset for those that own it and collect the rent. So we need to realign our thinking in this way and regard real estate as a resource. And I know there are plenty of people in this particular audience that will chime with that particular message. And perhaps one of the most fundamental things now is that we need to see research as, regard real estate as a commodity. It's no longer we're no longer building castles that will last for 100 or 200 years. We're moving to an environment where real estate needs to be turned on and turned off as required, as are other commodities. We saw the rise of the flexible space market in the early noughties emerge and scratch the surface of this. But I think that's all it's done. It's scratched the surface. There's a long way to go in terms of how we provide flexible space with service at different terms to a much more variegated customer base than we have in the past. So to bring this to some sense of conclusion, I think the underlying message here is that yesterday's truths and assumptions and norms are becoming tomorrow's, well, archaic practices, really. We'll look back upon some things we've been doing the last 20 years in a short order of time and wonder how we actually got away with it for so long. So I think there's a big mind shift that needs to take place here. And as I suggested before, real estate cannot remain immune from the technological, the social, the economic and the environmental changes taking place all around us. In fact, real estate needs to be an agent of change, not a bystander. and the old attitudes and perceptions that went along with the old asset management model will need to adapt quickly. In that sense, we don't need more chartered surveyors. We need more analysts. We need more curators. We need more experienced managers. These are new skills to the industry in which we all work. And we need to focus on service, experience, the environment, social justice, and business performance. These need to be the watchwords of the way we evaluate the success of our industry in the future, not whether or not we've achieved greater income from a piece of real estate. So my proposition to you is that we're moving from an era where we've been building castles for long-term, static, unchanging users to condominiums where change is the watchword. So that is my welcome to the era of unreal estate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. And Rob will be back for another Q&A before lunch, along with our next two speakers. Now, technology has always been both a driver and an enabler of change in the way we use buildings and in how we as FMs support the organisations we serve. For more than 30 years, Cisco has been a key player in that process. I remember being blown away when I was shown around their internet-powered home of the future in San Jose more than 20 years ago. Now Alexa does all that for me and she tells me jokes too. Our speaker has extensive experience in new and emerging technology and in the relationship between that and workplace design, policies and culture. He is Workplace Technology Strategist for Cisco. Your attention please for Mr. Mark Miller.
Hello, my name is Mark Miller and I'm part of Cisco's Global Collaboration Technology Organization. In today's session, I'm going to talk to you about the role of technology in the new hybrid workplace. I really just have two simple objectives for today's session. I want to discuss the important role that technology will play in enabling the hybrid workplace. And second, I want to identify the key factors for a successful technology deployment. The reality is the workplace has been going through a time of unprecedented change over the last 20 years, right? When we think about it, there have been many factors that have allowed us to move from those traditional workplace environments to those agile environments that we've all gone to, whether it's, the rise of a new workforce demographic, whether it's the changing nature of work or demand for flexibility. But I don't think any of us can debate the role of technology and the role that technology's had as both a catalyst and an enabler for workplace change. When we think about it, the availability of ubiquitous Wi-Fi access, the explosion of mobile devices into the marketplace, and the rise of a whole new family of collaboration tools has really allowed us to unchain ourselves from our desks and allowed us a much more freedom in how we work. The reality is, it's really been the catalyst for that phrase that said, work is not where you go, work is what you do. But 12 months ago, we were all faced with this pandemic. And I think this is going to be the single biggest catalyst for change going forward around the workplace. When we think about workplaces and we think about working, yesterday was all about being present. Today, it's all about being remote. And we question what tomorrow is going to be like. I think for all of us, our relationship with our workplace has changed. And for our employees, that's much the same. When we think about the workplace going forward, at Cisco, we really have embraced this concept of this notion of hybrid working. And the fact is that this is going to drive a lot of the things that we and many of our peers in our industry, things that we are going to be doing for the next 5 to 10 years. But look, this idea of hybrid working needs to be defined, and we need to really think about it and how it's different than flexible working, which we've been doing for years. And I think there's kind of three things that are really important here. When we think of flexible working, as good as it was really done at very limited, in a very limited fashion. Maybe 15 to 20% of the overall global population. At Cisco, we were very much a flexible working culture at being a technology company. So there may be cases where people really did fully go on, jump into the pool on this. I think with hybrid working, though, it's going to be done at scale. And I think there's no turning back from that. And I think there's some real implications around how we not only build space, how we plan space, how we build space, and how we operate space because of that. Second, I think flexible working was very structured in nature, right? We all fell into these patterns, and our employees fell into these patterns of being in the office certain days and working virtual other days. I think it's very different in a hybrid workplace environment. I think there's a lot of autonomy and choice given to employees. And with that, we're going to have a new set of tools that we provide to them to help them make decisions around when and where to work, and then how to leverage the workplace resources at their disposal. Lastly, as much as we talked about flexible working, it was really a location conversation. I was working at home, I was working at a co-working location, I was working in the office. I think hybrid working has a much broader implications. It's just not only where you work, but it's the work style, the workspace, and the workflow, how work gets done. We need to consider all three of these things, especially when we start to rationalize and think about our technology decisions. Now, the workplace is in fact going to change with in a hybrid world, right? But I think there's three characteristics. First, I think we need to make the workplace more informative. Second, the workplace needs to become more intelligent. And lastly, the workplace needs to be more collaborative. Let's take the first one, making the workplace more informative. The reality is we are going to need to find ways of communicating and engaging and informing our employees in this new world. Physical and digital signage has been just the way we've done it for years. But the reality is we are going to have to find new ways to serve and offer information. And we're going to have new strategies to make this happen as well. And this is going to be extremely important as people re-enter the workplace, right? One of the biggest things we see both internally at Cisco, as well as I talk to clients about this, is the role of information sourcing and digital signage in the re-entry, in the safe return to the office, keeping people informed about what's going on, reminding them of the behaviors that they need to embrace in order to go back safely. And this is going to be on every piece of glass possible. Purpose-built displays in your lobby, in your conference rooms, and it's going to have to be highly customized information. One of the things we're working at Cisco right now is how do we leverage our Wi-Fi infrastructure to understand how people are moving within a building, right? To understand how we can provide insights on occupancy, right? Once again, how can we leverage the investment we've made and all of you have made around a wireless network in this case to understand, based on mobile devices movement, what the occupancy of a floor is, what the occupancy of a building or a neighborhood, and providing this information to employees, right? That's very personalized, very specific it has contextual implications is going to be important. And also being able to provide this on different sources and in different forms, right? We are not always going to rely on the fact that our employees are going to be in the office. So we're going to need to provide them ways of obtaining that same information when they're working virtual, when they're on the go, when they're on the way to the office. And I think this is going to be a really important thing that all of us in the workplace industry focus on. Right? The workplace needs to become more intelligent. And how are we going to accomplish this? Right? We're going to take the sensing capability that's already within your workplace environment from the things you're already purchasing and the things you already installed. Things like lighting, other building management systems, badging systems, but also combine them with other things that you may not think about that have sensing capabilities. Things like your conference rooms, right? Those video endpoints that you've installed have the ability to provide data back to you on how your workplaces or how your spaces are performing. How do we do that? Well, for years, we've been using facial recognition, and this is Cisco and many other players in the industry have been using facial recognition to help provide a great experience around cropping of an image, knowing active speaker, and being able to send a proper image back to the participants in a meeting. But can we use the same technology to count people in the room? And can we use that same data to provide insights on how the spaces are being used? Really, really important. I think what you're also going to see is at the desk, you're going to start to see very similar capabilities, right? One of the things that we think about when we think about individual desks right now in the hybrid workplace, this notion of hot desking, right? Is a new wave of a new class of technology that will be coming in that will be very, very designed very, very specifically to the needs of a much more hybrid worker. In this case, somebody that can bring their mobile device, plop it down on this hub, and actually be able to bring the desk to life for them, bring their meetings with them. Well, first of all, automatically check in, then bring their meetings with them, then personalize the desk to their settings. It's really important that we have these experiences, but then on top of it, be able to use some sensing capability from these new platforms to once again report on usage and report on experience. And this reporting is going to take several different shapes. It's going to be around occupancy initially, and then it'll be around, a lot about workspace utilization, and then it'll be about technology performance and also experience management. Can we get a full 360-degree view of the experience of the employee when they're engaging with these workspace assets? From there, the opportunities are just limitless. How can we rethink the space management experience? How can we rethink when we have these assets in the room now to do auto booking or auto check-in or auto room release? How can we look to even change things like behaviors? If I understand that I have an individual that's camping out in a huddle space, and if I can understand that they're not using the technology to be on a call, they're just literally hiding, and then I understand that those spaces are becoming in demand, 80% occupied. Can I use it to display a message that says, hey, these assets or these rooms are in need, please consider taking your work elsewhere. I think there's a lot of opportunity here for us to do new things around how we manage space and reinforce the right policies that we want within the workplace. We can also start to make some intelligent workspace decisions. One of the things that we did at Cisco is we started to use many of these assets in our conference rooms, these video endpoints, to understand how many people were using a space, and then comparing that to the limits that we put on the space for occupancy as we did our safe return. A huddle space actually built for 5 people really is only good for 2 people now based on our density policy. So can I recognize a third person in the room? Can I blast a message to that room that says, hey, there's a third person who has joined, somebody needs to leave, or even better, can I actually book another space that the 3 of them can go work in, right? That's more appropriate for the capacity of the people and the number of people showing up. And lastly, how can I use the same information? Once again, my hybrid worker, how can I help them understand based on the network and all these devices within the workplace, give them some sense around occupancy and resource availability. I live in the United States. My closest office is New York City that I work at here at Cisco. But that for me is an hour and 45 minutes on the train, 20 minutes on the subway, 10 minutes on the sidewalk, and 9 floors in the elevator. If I make that journey and I get off onto my floor at Cisco and I realize there isn't a place for me to work, after making that journey, I'm pretty disappointed. I may come back again. If that happens to me twice, I'm probably not going to have a lot of trust in the workplace environment, right? I'm probably going to think twice or a third time about coming back in. We need to put tools in the hands of all of our employees to help them understand what they're getting into, right? And what resources are available for them when they arrive. Lastly, the workplace needs to become more collaborative. And this is really, really important. We fundamentally believe that when people go back to the office, they're going to go back in a different way. They're generally not going to go back to do heads down work. They're going to go back to be with their colleagues, their peers. They're going to be there to collaborate, to share, to socialize, to learn. And we're going to need to design our workplaces in that manner. As I'm involved also here at Cisco, when we're thinking about our real estate strategy, we understand that collaboration is not a single activity, right? That collaboration means different things. It means information sharing, decision making, team building, and brainstorming. And we need to design spaces very specific to these outcomes. And a lot of those spaces are going to have video. Why? We are going to have a very dispersed workforce for years to come. In fact, we believe that if not all, or a great majority of interactions are going to have a remote participant. So having video, available, not only in the walled spaces, but in the open plan is going to be critical in keeping employees engaged. But as you design these spaces, I think you need to make sure that you pay particular attention to those outcomes, right? And with that, I think there are a few different design criteria that you need to factor in. First, you have to think about orientation. You have to think about posture, surface, the ambiance of the space, and most importantly, the density. And just as important, alignment of space, technology, and furnishings together. We spend a lot of time at Cisco thinking about how technology comes into these spaces. And wherever possible, actually, when we think about a space and designing a new office, we put the technology first and we build the space around the technology. In actuality, we talk about the outcome first and then the tech and build the space around it. It's really important that you head these things off early and engage with your technology leads and technology peers around the proper placement of technology into especially these collaboration spaces. And lastly, when we think about the workplace environment, we need to understand that the workplace is going to need to work a lot harder to earn the trust and respect of our employees, our partners, our guests, right? We are going to need to offer them something in the workplace that they can't get at home. Otherwise, these hybrid workers will probably stay where they are. And I think that is the biggest challenge that we have as an industry. So let's think about looking forward. Let's think about where technology is going. Sort of where do we see the role of technology in the workplace? I think there's 4 categories. First, I think you're going to see a lot of focus around mobile technology, laptops, and wearables. Whether it's digital concierge services that are very specific to both context and location, the situation you're in and where you are. I think this notion of a cloud office, this idea that you bring the office with you, right? Your technology office with you wherever you go. So it's a similar experience, whether I'm in the office at home or at a co-working location. And obviously BYOT, bring your own tech. I think the second big area is around resource managers. I'm hoping that we will see a lot more predictive algorithms built in. I think this industry is really ripe for change around how we think about how we allocate space, right? And how we match need with resource availability, and how we enforce policy, how we make sure we're reinforcing the right behaviors as we think about the using of space. Third area, we are obviously going to see a lot more intelligent experiences, smart building technology integrated with collab to create intelligent interactions. Content integration services, be able to more easily bring content into meetings specifically and the overall workflow. Conversational interfaces, being able to interact via dialogue with the technology, and obviously a much more immersive workspaces. And lastly, analytics. especially around being able to forecast and understand the overall experience management. Bringing emotion and sentiment reporting in is also going to be important. We're going to need that for that continuous feedback loop and understanding behavioral analytics. Let's understand the behaviors of our employees so we can design workplaces better. So lastly, here are the keys to success. You need to put employees at the center of everything you do. Personas are great, but it's really important that you start doing journey mapping about the experiences of your office-bound employees, your remote workers, and your hybrid workers. They all have different experiences. They all have different needs. Second, there's no instruction manual in this. Engage with your peers, your suppliers, and subject matter experts. We're all figuring this out together. Alignment of HR and partnerships between facilities, IT, and HR is absolutely key. We're not going to solve this problem unless we all get on this together. And lastly, don't be afraid to fail. It's really important. As I said, this is a journey, not a destination. So with that, thank you for your time today. And I wish you luck in your creation of the hybrid workplace.
Thank you, Mark. See you in the Q&A shortly. I've lost count of how many conference sessions I've sat through over the last 50 years on the future of the office. It's an institution whose demise has often been predicted, but the office is still the main workplace for some 30 to 40% of the nation's workforce. The majority, of course, still work in non-office environments. However, thanks to the pandemic, the debate about working from home and the future of the office has hit mainstream news media. And even Lord Foster has been on the news predicting the conversion of high-rise city offices into residential apartments. So what's really going on? Here with some insight is one of the great thought leaders on the workplace scene in recent years. Leader of the Global Research Program for JLL Corporate Solutions since 2015, with a talk entitled The Future of Work, I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Marie Puybaraud.
Thanks, Martin. Thanks for the introduction and the context of this presentation. So let's look at the future of work and how you can shape this future of work, what it's going to look like. A lot of the presentation that I'm going to give you today is based, of course, on my global research activities, and particularly on two reports which I've published recently. The first one on Reimagine, the new future of work to shape a better world, and Reimagining Human Experience. So I will be relying on the insight from this research, and I wanted to share that with you at the beginning of the presentation. So we are on a path, and I think 2020 was probably the strangest year of our life for many of us. But the path towards the next normal is an opportunity to build a competitive advantage. And one of the role of the workplace is to actually help organization build this competitive advantage and look at the future of work as an opportunity to probably put together a working environment which we've been thinking about for decades, and the crisis is giving us this opportunity to really realize it. So the path is going to take a while. We know that the resemblance to normalcy will be reached beyond 2021. And as much as possible, we want to look at 2021 as an opportunity to experiment, to pilot new concept before we actually think about implementing a final concept and physically creating the future of work. But there are numbers of big themes and drivers which are important to take into account when we think about the future of work. And I've identified three of them. The first one is around the worker-centric world. More than ever, we need to pay attention to the notion of experience and performance. And I think last year, the large-scale experimentation around work from home gave us an opportunity to test at scale the impact of work from home, and also how robust our system is to support remote working. And we actually demonstrated it is possible. We demonstrated it without having too much impact on the level of performance of the workforce. So is it down to the fact that everybody put more effort into it, and therefore in time of crisis, that we have not seen any significant impact on productivity, but to be proven over the next years. The second driver is around digital and sustainability enablement. Now, we all know how much we rely today on a very robust digital platform to enable the future of work, because the future of work is going to be hybrid and is going to actually require higher capabilities around our technology infrastructure. On one hand, to support remote working, but on the other hand, also to operationalize, the future of work, and making sure that we can drive more dynamic occupancy planning in the way we operate, our facilities. But 2020 was also a big wake-up call around the topic of sustainability and responsibility. And we're seeing from our clients that they want to seize this opportunity to bring sustainability at the top of the agenda. And while they are moving towards new working environments, they also want to address the topic of sustainability. The last driver and priority is around health and wellness. This one will not come as a surprise to many of you. We know how much the topic of healthy workplace is gaining importance, and for the right reason. But more importantly, we are going to have to cope with the impact of COVID on the workforce, and what I call the health footprint, the impact of on the mental health, the long-term COVID crisis, and how it's going to impact on the workforce. All of these are really coming together to help us shape what the future of work is going to be about. And in order to do this, one of the key steps, which we've paid a lot of attention to, is understanding what are the workforce preferences. So I've summarized them here on this slide, because for us, we're seeing that better understanding what are the new priorities of the workforce, what do they aspire to when they return to work, what type of working environment they expect to have, how do they aspire to work with others when they return to the office, are super important topic. And we found that this is very complex. It's complex because as much as we were forced to work from home, the return to the office is going to be twice as difficult for many reasons. Part of the workforce don't want to return into an office. They're comfortable actually working from home. The other part, fear the quality of working environment they're going to find when they return into the office, and they have different aspiration about what they call an office and why we have an office. And I think that's where the whole topic of the office being a social hubs, the topic of hybrid, comes into place. The notion of experience also comes into place. So a lot of learning around, workforce preferences. But overall, we are seeing from the data that we have collected that the large majority wants to return to an office. 66% of employees want to be able to alternate between different places of work. They consider the hybrid model as the most suitable model. And we have a cohort of 24% who exclusively wants to be in an office. So the office is not dead, that's for sure. And 76% are going to drop back into this office on a regular basis. And the regularity of their visit to an office, we estimated between 2 and 3 days per week. I think a lot of our clients at the moment are looking very clearly at 2 days per week as a permanent state. Some are gravitating towards 3 days, but really the cohort is around 2 days, per week. So as we look at the level of services which are required into offices, clearly the focus on health and well-being is extremely strong. I mean, 3 out of 4 workers expect advanced services focus on health and well-being and nutrition. So we're seeing that it's not just a case of having a nice office environment. You need to boost the level of services which are offered to your employees. And we've been spending actually last year a tremendous amount of time to look at how we can broaden the scope of the service offering for people who work from home. And that starts by delivering, hot meals to their home, or even providing babysitting, services. And those are probably the type of services which are going to be carried forward when we, return to the office. We also know that new working standards, emerging. I mean, no surprise to see cleaning and hygiene, high item level, at the top of the agenda. I mean, the crisis is really reinforcing, these needs. But we know that standards around remote working, less dense working environment, digital interaction as much as possible, those are all the things which are important when we think about the office, of the future. We also know that when you think about the future of work, you need to think to start differently about what is the purpose of the office. And clearly here, what we're hearing from the workforce is that the office as a social hub, as a place to collaborate, is the number one priority. Okay, so the return to the office is going to be orchestrated around a place to get together, a place to interact with other individuals. But we're seeing as number 3, a space connected with nature. And this is probably a call for occupiers and investors to start to think about where is the location of their facilities and how they can reinforce, the connection with nature. So a lot of things are part of, the future universe of, the future of work. So if we take away and embrace those new workforce expectations, then we're seeing 3 priorities. Number 1, it's going to be around hybrid work. Okay, so that notion of 2 to 3 days working from home, the rest of the time spent in an office or maybe into co-working environment has to be on the list. Second one, it's around employee engagement. So we're hearing that focus on health, well-being and nutrition needs to be at the top of your list. Attraction also by working differently, a better work-life balance. I mean, we have seen that 74% are attracted by a 4-day work week. So this is again calling for a workforce which is much closer to their work-life balance. And third priority is around human connection. Now, the office of the future will be a place to foster socialization and connection to the outdoor. Number 1. Number 2, we also know that they want to actually engage with others and be much more interactive. So those workforce expectations are really calling occupiers, employers to think about the future of work and start to redefine the new purpose of the workplace. It's when you bring together work and the workforce that you really start to see what is the new purpose of the workplace. Now, we try to define this, and here we're proposing 5 priorities. A purpose around brand and experience, learning, socialization, innovation, culture and pride in belonging, employee engagement and experience, and of course, a focus on health and well-being. So it's important because this is starting to really call for the future of work to be orchestrated around an hybrid model. And you all heard about the topic of hybrid. We define hybrid as a mix between an office environment, home environment, and working from anywhere. But more importantly, we know that the hybrid workplace is not one single definition. In a way, what you have is a continuum, which shift between a very much an office-centric, premises-centric, view versus a virtual, remote, view. And it's the mix between all of this type of environment which is going to actually provide you your hybrid, model. The best definition that you can find is the one from McKinsey, and so I encourage you to read the report of McKinsey, because McKinsey, number one, define hybrid across four different perspectives. So they look at still access to a large headquarter with a mix of multiple hubs, micro hubs, and the possibility to rely on flex space. But more importantly, they match hybrid model against the ability to access talent, impact on productivity, and the cost of real estate. Now, clearly, the more dispersed you are, the higher your ability to access talent, and of course, the higher the cost. Okay, and the more, I would say, office-centric you are, the lower, the cost. So it's important, and it's the first, way to look at hybrid. But what is the world out there doing? We actually looked at what is into the public domain, where companies are shifting, and here is an example about where companies at the moment are against this hybrid workplace continuum. It's interesting because we're seeing that not all of the traditional organizations are shifting towards an office-centric model. Actually, those ones seems to gravitate towards the middle, a mixed of office and flex space. And it's not because you are a technology company that immediately, you fit on the remote, virtual, continuum. So at the moment, those priorities are not final, they're shifting, but they are demonstrating that companies are building on the momentum and the opportunity to build their competitive advantage through hybrid. And this is what is important. And while they build this advantage, they also want to bring in elasticity as part of their real estate model, because there are two, I would say, driving forces. The first one is around the workforce. What the level of dispersion of your workforce, and your footprint, what the level of dispersion of your footprint. This is what is going to help shift, I would say, the models towards, hybrid, and help you imagine the new future of work, scenarios. So we're seeing that a lot of organizations are gravitating towards looking at the flexibility of the allocation of space into their workplaces. Now, some of them will clearly be reducing their footprint, but it feels like they want to build on the capacity to move towards a liquid footprint, and also at the same time boost dynamic occupancy planning. So they end up with a workplace which is dedicated to collaboration, which minimize, of course, the space dedicated to individual spaces, but maximize the potential of the office to be a social hub. And this is what the future of work is about. This is the image you have here on the right-hand side. It needs to be a place it needs to be a real estate model where you mix in-office activities, work from home activities, and work from anywhere. It needs to be a place which is self and supportive, productive and engaged, well and empowered, and communal and fulfilled. Okay. At the end of the day, the workplace of the future is a place to learn, to connect, to contribute, and to socialize. We have to give priority to boost amenities and services, and really merge the boundaries between home life, social life, and work life. I think if I have to summarize it, this is a way that I would summarize the future workplace and what it could look like. But we need to bear in mind that the world in 2021 is going to be very complex to navigate. These are the 10 things which you really need to take away when you think about the point that you need to address in 2021. And they are about building this worker-centric model and creating the hybrid model, shifting your leadership mindset towards really creating an always-on transformation, leading to an always-on resiliency, but also thinking about the new purpose for the workplace, focusing on health and well-being, enhancing human experience and human performance, and bringing technology to enable everything, as much as creating a future of work around being responsible and sustainable. So it's complex, but the future of work is bright, and we are definitely taking the opportunity that we have ahead to significantly transform the purpose of the workplace and shift toward this hybrid model with a lot of confidence. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Marie. Terrific information. Looking forward to talking with you shortly. But first, a view on what all this means for the strategic planning of facilities service providers. As the needs of organisations change, so too must the solutions on offer from the companies that support them. The challenge always lies in understanding the market, deciding where you want to play, and developing winning propositions. When so much has changed and is still in flux, it seems to me that if you aren't already reviewing your strategy, then you need to get a move on. Our speaker is an award-winning entrepreneur and founder of Baachu, the data-driven consultancy and advisory firm for facilities and workplace service providers, who support organisations to do just that. With a talk called Facing the Challenges and Seizing the Opportunities, please welcome Baskar Sundaram.
Thank you so much, Martin, for your kind introduction. To all the listeners who have joined Workplace Futures, I would like to very much welcome you to my talk, Facilities and Workplace Services, Facing the Challenges, Seizing the Opportunities. So in remembrance of our industry, so much has happened in this 1 year, but if there is one thing that worked to try. And at the same time, I just want you to consider this presentation as an analogy. As I mentioned, so many industries were destroyed. We also lost a lot of souls. So I would like to take this presentation to also say rest in peace to those businesses, to those individuals. So my contact details is at the bottom. But if you want to know who am I am Baskar, Chief Exec and founder of Baachu. Many of you know me as a growth strategist because the top 35 strategic suppliers, 18 out of 35 use our services for the end-to-end growth strategy. That includes government, commercial function, and crowd commercial services. But most importantly, I believe in human leadership and humanness in business. And we also run top 10% rated Apple podcast series called Baachu Talk. So that's me. If you want to get connected to me, you could simply scan the QR code. You will get my contact details plus additional information about this presentation as well. So with that note, that's my little mascot saying, welcome again. Let's begin the journey. As a pragmatic leader, before we get some conclusions about what works in the industry, let's study whether we are actually in fact sinking. What are some of the factors that determine whether we're sinking or we are thriving? This is the emotional roller coaster every single one of us went through. It could be employees, investors, buyers, end users, government, leaders. Every single business went through this cycle. We were fearful, relieved, hopeful, skeptical, concerned, confused, holding. Brexit referendum, vaccine came out. Now we are in the second phase. Brexit is done. There is a second variant of COVID. Either way, that cycle will always continue. Please do remember this. Before you market, before you reach out to somebody, people are going through this multiple emotions at every level. And that's generic, that's applicable to everyone. So why? Thanks to a good friend, COVID. So before I get into what happened, what was the impact to our industry, let me go and check how did the whole thing pan out. Number one, there was a huge shock to the economy. Number two, what we are facing today is the reactions to the shock, and everybody is reacting differently to the shock. You would see the multiple interventions that came from the government, which means we all need to abide by the rules of lockdown, abide by the rules of eat out in August, abide by the rules of school closing, homeschooling, etc. But that's been happening, and we all are reacting to the shock, and means furloughs, business loans, so and so. So what happens to industry? 100 plus contracts were terminated. 3 times the number of contracts were actually renewed or extended, but with different terms that were existed pre-COVID. It also means 15,000 plus facility services employees were furloughed, and close to 1,000, which is close to 10% of those guys actually lost their job. Many are still working long leg trying to prove their worth, because That's the way it has done. Lockdown zombies, as they call it. Most importantly, the most important thing, let me reiterate again, is during this process, we lost 300 plus facility services colleagues. Whether we done enough for those guys, whether we gave a shout out, whether we showed empathy, it's a question mark, but let me land that point and leave it with you to do what it is. This is my point. So many industries got destroyed. Some of you might have direct experience with this. Some of you might be working for this, but simplifying this, speaking to 130 senior stakeholders in the top 85 companies, this is where the market stands. The market stands like most of our colleagues are observing the market. They have done whatever they can, and now they're observing, waiting for reactions. Number two, there are very few providers who are planning to accelerate. And then you have 1/3 of the providers who are in a survivor mode because they've been very niche. They got stuck in this industry that got destroyed. They're finding the way out. You find most of these details available in IFM Trends and Opportunities report that I wrote. But if it's not, please do share it with me. I will be happy to share that. So this could happen to you. That's my point. This could happen to you. Some will destroy themselves by their reactions because there is not enough data points that's available. People will make decisions of what they know. But either way, some of those survivors might not survive, not the down. So it feels nothing is working as it stands. So I did during that period, from March all the way to November, I did what great marketers or great leaders would do. I sold nothing. What did I do? I just gave my hand. What did I do? Why? Because every single one of us were working long and late, trying to restructure our company, trying to restructure our lifestyle, trying to keep our families running. We still attended meetings all day, and in the evenings and weekends we were working. That whole thing of work-life balance got hampered, and every single one of you could relate to this. Which means when you're reaching out to somebody, all you could give them is, are you standing with them? Are you sharing empathy? That's it. This is, my dear friends, one marketing strategy or one human strategy that you could employ at any time, regardless what business you are, regardless who you are, etc. We launched Baachu Together campaign. Forget about the differences. Forget about the trust deficit in the industry. We are here to support you. We had close to 830 conversations during this, and we captured and shared the stories of this human leader. So it's the only marketing strategy works every single time. Being human, have conversations, don't sell, just listen. How are you? What's happening? Is there anything I can do to help you? That's it. So 2021 is going to be a pivotal year. You have three options. Number one, sell nothing. Continuing to do what you're currently doing. Keep holding what you have, or sell something, or what we call crack. Crack is how you can make your customer smile. It's a methodology, how we do. But the challenges still continues. It's not just COVID, is it? The identity of facilities management sector, there is a huge identity crisis. Everybody is pulling the market in different directions. Future of work, future of workplace, IT, technology, energy, you name it. Everybody is pulling it. So when you position yourself as I'm an FM company, I'm a workplace company, you will clearly see every single company's tagline has been changed to position whoever they are. And the other huge gap that you find is there is no industry body in UK. Yes, it's a bold statement, but if you go and look who stood with you in this time of crisis, you would know none of the industry bodies stood with you. We weren't able to even get the key workers accreditation at the right time. Every single company has to fight for their own restructuring. So I'll just leave the point to ponder with you. And this message came very strongly from these top 85 leaders, top 85 company leaders. Only 3% actually believed the industry bodies actually did something of value with them in this time of crisis. With that point, trends will be based on reactions. Of course, everybody reacted differently, industry bodies reacted differently, but your persona of who you are, why you do things, it's drastically changing as well. Government became the biggest buyer, and the services that government bought was radically different to what they used to procure. Then you have the commercial. The property directors who used to be the sponsors of FM moved on to be IT directors, and there is a merge between IT and property in the industry. So in this case, the marketing directors who are not much involved on hands-on selling needs to get their hands dirty to reach out to the IT directors to sell them what FM means, whereas the sales and BD guys were traditionally doing what they're doing. And then the other part, you have the end users and the investors who are scratching their head to understand what this industry is all about. The numbers that were put forward, the annual planning is again rest in peace, where every single company moved into month-on-month planning. So investors were struggling to really understand what they put forward in the annual planning strategy reports is actually making sense. So who are you marketing to, right? finding yourself, positioning yourself in a crowded facilities marketplace itself is another challenge that you're going to face. So far, every industry has procured, every sector. We have 11 plus sectors in government, and we have another 9 plus sectors in the private. It's there in our website. If you go and look, every single sector procured differently, which means every single company have positioned differently. Where are you in this bubble, all the way from low to the high end? How are we going to position ourselves? Every single company is trying to do, but the end result is still so far is the same. There is unpredictable sales, there is low to no margins, and there is non-transferable value that's been created. So this is the mind of the chief exec. When everybody is talking about everything, there are people who are doing their best. They are doing their best. And this shout out is to those guys, those leaders, mid-level leaders, employees, everybody. Yes, you're alone, but you're not lonely. You are doing your best. You are doing this for you. Things are going to work. I just want to land that message. But before we get into the next topic, these are the challenges: identity crisis, persona of the buyer's change, COVID impact, reactions-based sector. With those challenges, let's look at how we can seize the opportunities. As the legendary Peter Drucker once said, there are only 2 things a business can do. One is innovation, second is marketing. Everything else is a cost. So when you are looking and trying to make yourself working on a day-to-day basis, what are you actually doing? Are you adding value? In a digital first world, marketing matters more than ever, which means marketers matter more than ever. Do you think it's just a function? No, every single person is a marketer. From the alumni who used to work for your company, from your current employees, from your client, everybody is marketing you. The biggest lesson is, as marketers in this current climate, we need to be ready for anything. So my critical question before I even progress to give you some options is, do you know how customers happen in your business? Go and find it. It's not sales, it's not bidding, it's not thought leadership article. Go and find this answer. You're going to find some profound responses. Document what it is, not what should be. Everybody has a bid life cycle process, but that's broken, totally broken, because it only captures your tenders. Go back to the very beginning, from the time from your website, marketing, content, thought leadership, all the way to sales, business development, business winning, customer experience, operations, renewal. Are they making sense? There are companies who have won B2B campaign of the year who lost contracts. There are companies who have got NPS scores of 17 or 19 for the client, the customer terminated. There are companies who have a great win rate, but they weren't able to retain their customers. Why? There are leaks from start to end. Sit down with your team. If you have a strategy, marketing, customer experience, sales, BD, bid team, sit down together, identify your glance. It's very simple. From start to end, map out what it is. This is, again, let me reiterate, this is not your bid life cycle. Brainstorm the task, brainstorm the activities, check the layouts, connect the dots, finalize your flow, let everybody know where they play a role, because your customer doesn't see which function they're operating. Your customer sees one thing, your company, right? Everyone wants to know. If you want to know, the next step is, what's the next big thing in marketing? I would go very, very simple. Optimize your email strategy first. Before you even go and tell the whole world, go and tell your current customers, go and tell your current consumers, go and tell your current end users who you are, what you do, why you do, before you actually go and do anything. Second one is pivoted. This is important. That's a beautiful quote that came from the chief executive Lolo. But what you find here is, your business, define the business by the people you serve, not the product or service you sell or how you sell it. It's very, very important. You could be hard FM, soft FM. So what? Doesn't mean anything. You are doing test centers now. It was their part of the thing? No. You are there to solve a problem for your customer, which means your identity is defined by the product or services you are solving for your customer. So define your business by the people you serve. Go and find what people you serve, what services you provide, then you define. Inside Baachu, you find all these things. But what happens there is, these people, the chief execs, the marketing directors, the sales directors, the investors and buyers, dictated solutions for us. So we are now an ecosystem of 25 plus products and services. Why? That's how it is. How tight are you with your customers? The second super important question before you even consider is, how tight are you with the customers? How sticky are you with the customers? Go and find it, ask them. So 2021, everybody has a growth plan. Yes, you know what? The listeners or people who are watching this Workplace Futures conference could be at any level. They could be a corporate, which could be you might be going for a mature growth, or you might be a mid-level company looking for a steady growth or rapid growth if you're a tech company, hyper growth if you're a unicorn. But either way, These are the different types of growth that you're going for. The numbers are just for descriptive purposes, but you know where you are. How much do you plan to grow? Whatever the format that you're going to go for, there are 4 different things that's going to come to you. Number 1, it's the innovation engine. How are you going to create, update, and improve your offerings? Number 2, how are you going to deliver the promised value of fulfillment engine? Number 3, how are you going to attract and convert new customers? This is the traditional marketing. And number 4 is your monetization engine. For once, forget about how you're structured. Look into your engine types. Look into your engine types and bucket your engine types. We call this value mapping. And if you want, these are the questions that you can ask yourself. Many of the answers for these questions are available in our websites in forms of research reports, insight articles, memberships, you name it. Even we have a social listening tools where you could monitor your customer and competitors in real time, right? So look into this: innovation, fulfillment, growth, monetization. Check these questions. How am I competing? Why am I competing? Is this how I want to position yourself? Is there any other new market can I create? At the moment, everything is different. What COVID has done is we were able to create so many things. But how? These are the core 3 problems that our clients face, which means we need to create our product and services around these 3 things. Number 1, predictable sales. Number 2, bankable profits. Number 3, transferable value. These are the key problems our clients faces is you. You are our client. So it is it. So pointers are, what can we do to accelerate sales? What can we do to accelerate profit? What can we do to accelerate value? Let's look at some of the things. Every company has a mission, vision, value. Every company has so-called brand and logo. But the perception, IFM brand survey is coming up very soon. And IFM's confidence survey is also coming up very soon. My point to you is, there's a perception of your brand. How do you think the perception is created? Your brand is a character. Your brand is a character. And how you're going to position your brand is your company should have a soul. And how are you going to share that soul is, we follow this one, is what we call a character diamond. Character diamond is something you are going to say, hey, my brand is not all glossy. Look at me. I'm the top 10% of the top 5%. No, it's human. People need flaws. Nobody is perfect. Nobody is perfect. Your company is not perfect. Yeah, you know that. I know that. My company is not perfect. So what's the point? Keep on telling, look at me, how good I am. Look at my thought leadership. Look at my success. Look at this. No, shared vulnerability. How can you share vulnerability? It's by showing your company as a character. Here we go. You know, this is something that we use, character diamond under the tool. Number 1, primary character. What's your primary character? What does one thing that your company stands for? What's your secondary character? What's the second thing your company stands for? What's absolutely non-negotiable for your company? And what's the quirky thing or mask flaw that you have? If you look at Baachu, number 1, primary character is for us is number 1, curiosity. Number 1. Number 2, secondary character, confidence. Non-negotiable, we are purely values driven. We pick our customers carefully when we are working with strategic partners. Why? It's values driven. Number 4, what's the quirkiness? Like any curious child, we go with the next glossy object. We go and create another product, another service, you know? So this is another, here is a little challenge. Here is a primary character trait. Come out with a Q&A. Anybody who answers this question gets a free market insight report. Look at this. Who is this? Which company is this, or which character is this, right? It's orphaned, bullied, sacrificed for the family, and also overconfident, impulsive. Who is it? Find me the answer. Go and find this for your company. And if you look at Baachu, this is how we share our story. We stand for you. This is our big message. And our characters. Our characters are built based on our customers. So we don't talk just companies. We created our own characters. The genie, mascot, little boy, right? This is who we are. So for me, go and have this worksheet and create the structure. The character diamond. What's your primary character? What's your secondary character? What's non-negotiable for you? We touched 5 things. Yes, you might not even know we touched 5 things. Number 1, stand by me, show the empathy, be human. Number 2, value mapping, start to end. Where do you add values? We don't all want to work as zombies, lockdown. Find what you value. Stop doing things that don't add value. Optimize your email strategy. Construct your companies on the product and services that means to your customer, not who you are, what you do. Character diamond. Send the QR code. You will also get 2 more, what we call a customer experience elevator and a customer touchpoint inventory. A quick recap. If you could adjust few things, few things consistently within your company, you can grow your projects double. I'm not a big believer. Yes, we publish research insight reports, but most importantly, the market trends will be more or less going to be based on reactions of the companies. There is two things that I could confidently say. It's an outdated buyer and customer experience and virtual sales. Nobody's prepared for this, but what you can tell here is from our analysis, there are the observers, the accelerators, and the survivors. They are reacting differently to the market. By their reactions, many opportunities will be coming out. This is something for you to think. How are you approaching this? How are you approaching this? Let me go back and say, people will remember what you did when in times of crisis. Did you stand for something? Did you ask them when, empathy, humanness? Otherwise, nothing else matters. That's one thing that works in this industry. So, stand with them, be human. Anything else will follow from here. And you can contact me if you need. Here is my QR code. And that's the topic. Seize the challenge, but the most importantly, seize the opportunities. Yes, it's a stressful environment, but there is a way forward by being human. Take good care, everybody. Stay healthy. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Baskar. I was hoping that Baskar and Rob will be joining us on stage. If you can click on your links and come and join us, guys, that'd be great. But otherwise, I'm delighted to be with the wonderful Marie Puybaraud. And I would love to see your questions for Marie, please, popping up in the chat. Before we do that, let's look at the polls, Marie. Will office occupancy ever return to pre-2020 levels? No, 82%. That's pretty conclusive. A bit of a disagreement about how much change needs required. Some people, 52% say massive change required. 43% say just some change required. And a very small number thinking it's just about the management. What do you take from those figures?
Well, I'm not surprised by the result. I mean, we have to expect a significant change going forward. Now, the definition of what the change will look like is another matter, because there's a lot of debate at the moment around footprint reduction and how we shift all of our working environment towards activity-based working environment. This is not new. I mean, they were always, talk about shifting footprint allocation. But we are also hearing that the reduction of density into premises will actually require more footprint. So right now, it's very difficult to say where we're going to shift, although I am, and I know that most people out there who are listening are saying, Marie, it's going to come down, but it was planned to actually reduce. So let's wait for another 6 months until we have more clarity about what is the final decision that organizations are going to be taking, especially around the model of hybrid. And on top of looking at their footprint, they're also going to be addressing the topic of the dispersion of the footprint. And I think that dispersion is going to require different type of working environment, especially access to flex space, co-working environment, micro hubs, multiple hubs dispersed across a large geographical area. This is the direction that many corporate clients are taking at the moment. So too early to say. Significant changes ahead, and a significant also investment around technology. So that's where, the presentation we heard on technology and how technology is going to be embedded into, premises and infrastructure is going to be super important, not only for the workforce, but also for us in facilities management and real estate, because it's going to enable us to really manage occupancy dynamically. And that's where the whole topic of dynamic occupancy planning and management really comes into place, which I think was a question raised by Neil Ursher earlier into the presentation.
That raises the question that a couple of people have just popped up about how the speed of this. If investment in technology hasn't been made. We know how long that takes. And again, Rob Harris's piece about the nature of real estate, the way it currently is, makes it very inflexible. Customers, organizations are going to want these changes now. But we're not going to be able to deliver them that quickly, and they're big decisions, so how soon can people say this is the future and this is where we should start spending our money?
The transformation that we are facing is taking us on a long path. I don't think you can expect everything to be done over the next, 8 to 12 months. Certainly not going to happen because of exactly what Rob is saying, that the majority of the spaces out there are not suited to welcome hybrid into a fast track solution. So it will require adaptation, it will require investment, it will require also a lot of change management in order to get people to work within those new environment. So I strongly believe that we are on a long road, on a long path that is going to take several years to get to what I call this comfort zone around hybrid. And saying this, there's probably a minority of organizations who have already started the shift towards an hybrid model, and they are going to activate a return to work around hybrid much quicker than others, but those do not represent the majority. So we have a big question out there, is that what is the percentage of the workplace that we have today suited for hybrid? And this is, I don't have the answer yet on this.
And we are joined by Baskar. Thank you, Baskar.
Thank you. Sorry.
Everybody understands. See, this is it about technology. Everybody understands the difficulties we're having. Mark can't join us from New York. Baskar was having. Oh, and here's Rob. That's great. Great. Both of you. Let me turn to. Forgive me, Baskar. Let me turn to Rob first on very much the point that we were just making. These changes that are needed in offices and other workplaces, the investment in technology, the investment in restructuring the way real estate is, it's going to take time. But I know that the FM companies on here are all going to be saying, their clients are going to be saying, we need it now. We need it soon. How are we going to manage that?
That's a huge question.
Yeah.
Well, there will be a mismatch between desires and expectations and delivery, and part of that will be driven by economics and partly driven by the structure of the supply industry. And most people in Europe are on at least 3, if not 5-year leases. And so they can't immediately change their footprint anyway. So there will be a bit of a lag between a desire and an action anyway. And I think that period can be best used by really thoroughly planning what needs to be done in the light of experience rather than speculation. I think that's really, really important, because we can't all jump in the same direction in a speculative way because we don't know where we're jumping to. We've got to sort of take this thing a little bit gradually, learn from experience, learn the lessons along the way, and do it in a more measured fashion, I think. That would be my response to that question. There will be a mismatch, but I think it needs to be a managed mismatch.
Okay, so Baskar, as a developer of strategy, are we always going to have this lag between customer demand and what we're able to supply as a sector?
Yes, Martin. I think considering Mary and Rob are here, I'm the mini-me version. So what we need to understand here is there are so many moving parts. The workplace, real estate, property is just one part of a big jigsaw puzzle. And at the moment, the whole market is in a phase of reaction. If there is another collapse of a property, or another collapse of real estate, then that becomes a priority. Tomorrow, the priority changes to hey, the cleaning consumables or, the technology sensors, etc. So, every leader in the business is in a reactory mode or they are in an observing mode, Martin, and the market will get corrected itself in the next 3 years.
Yeah.
But we need to wait for it to be corrected. And how it will be corrected, whether FM will exist, whether FM will be determined to something else, all I can tell you today is the companies who call themselves FM will not call themselves FM in the future. The companies who don't even think that they are in the FM industry today will be playing a very important role in the FM in the next 3 years. So we just need to wait and see. So I'm not going to say whether there is a lag. There is a general lag in anything, and we are all reacting to it in our own pace. And remember that the decision makers are sitting at home making these decisions as well, and they come up with his own baggage of what's right, what's wrong. So that's a long-winded response, but all I can say that is the market will correct itself, and that will be based on the reactions of the buyers and the providers. Most importantly, it will be totally reactive.
And I think it's an important point, actually, Baskar, that interim stage, the shock absorption, which I think you talked about in your presentation, is going to be with us for a while. Some have already taken, the curve of acceleration and are building their competitive advantage out of the crisis. Others are still in the muddle. Some are still wondering, how are we going to get out of this? And it may take them 6-9 months to find the most suitable solution and then build up the competitive advantage. But the point that Rob, raised in terms of the length of the leases is extremely important, because many corporate occupiers have, in their basket, a lot of rotten apples. So buildings which are not suitable for hybrid work, they stuck in it for many years to come. And we're seeing a lot of the leases coming back on the market because, of course, any opportunity that they have today to break a lease, they will do it. But it doesn't mean that they're not contemplating moving back into new premises which are more suitable to address hybrid. So I think we are into this zone where you're absorbing the shock, you're surviving, and you're kind of thinking, okay, what is the next step that I have to take, which is going to take me toward this permanent state? Okay, so interim is still going on. Permanent will probably happen in 2022, 2023, even beyond for some of them.
What really good question from Martin Reed. Should all this be left to the industry, to the market to develop these solutions? There's been a bit of commentary going on there about our lack of a trade body, our lack of engagement with government. Are we hampered by that, or can the market take control itself? But Baskar.
Yes, thank you for that. It was very evident that the leaders were looking for some collective consensus from the industry or so-called industry bodies to just say, hey, some principles we need to agree. As providers, buyers, this is what, and then every company build the uniqueness, or every buyer build the uniqueness on top of it. But at the moment, the foundation of the principles are left out to the companies themselves. Or the buyers themselves to decide what is it they want. I think there is and so you can clearly see every company, like, Mary being an authority of future of workplace and workplace, has come up with a lot of thought leadership, right? But Mary has done her best, but it should be not just Mary and JLL. It should be a collective consensus that needs to build up, hey, this is who we are, and then every company let them go and position themselves competitively. There's a huge gap. And there's the same thing that was very relevant from the government side, where government was desperate to have an industry body like an IOD, like somebody else, to just come and have this discussion with them during this time of crisis. But it was left out to the companies. And I saw the BSA name. The BSA is a holistic organization. They will not represent FM. BSA is just a general public services. They cover justice, they cover construction, defense, you name it, all the stuff. And FM is a small part. And in that, I've always seen them discussing cleaning, right? So there is an absolute need for us to come together here, regardless which brand, I don't care, or the industry doesn't care. because we need to be pretty honest here. Are we fit for purpose today? And if not fit for purpose today, what do we need to do in the next 6 to 9 months? Because day in and day out, we are losing people, either through furloughs, through redundancies, or companies going bust. And we can't just leave that to the market to dictate what needs to happen. I think let this be a foundation for a fruitful future for all of us. And I would say, we have a fresh beginning now with Brexit in UK. So let it be a fresh start to the FM market as well.
I think that's a really good point looked at from the FM point of view. Rob, what about the real estate point of view? Can we effect those changes without engaging government?
Well, I don't think you can, actually. Now, if I can be controversial for a moment, I think 90% of what I read about this debate either comes from the design community or the real estate surveying community. So it's either about designing solutions or it's about cutting out space for smaller footprints. Now, the lead here should be from the management profession, because we're going to manage our way out of this. We're not going to design our way out of it, and we're not going to footprint our way out of it. We're going to manage our way out of it. And I don't see the leadership coming from the real estate management profession in the way that I feel it should do, because it's divided into tribes. There's no unity there in terms of what it's doing or what it's driving. There's no single message going from the management community to any government. It's a split set of messages, and therefore it's less effective and it's less powerful. And I see the whole thing about the future is that we're moving from product to service. Yeah, we're moving from an asset-based model to a service-based model. So the FM profession, however you want to call it, Baskar, give it a new name, that's at the center of that discussion, but it's not putting itself out there to be the leader of that discussion. So that's my controversial point.
Correct.
Marie, you work for one of the biggest real estate organizations in the world. How do they feel about us all talking about their future is completely different to their past?
Yeah, it's. Everything that both Baskar and Rob, said is absolutely true. I mean, the fact is, the level of urgency at the moment is somewhere else, and engaging into conversation with governments is not on the priority list. So we as service providers, we have to provide an answer. But I can tell you that 100% of our clients out there are expecting an answer, and they will come to us to find this answer. So we built our point of view, which I have developed for JLL on the topic of reimagine the future of work, on human experience, shaping human experience, based on what we have found as part of our research and what others also are saying, because we're not the only one, as Baskar said, to do research on the future of work, on trying to understand workforce preferences, but also listening to how our clients are navigating the future of work. So I don't think we will ever come to a universal solution. I don't think so. Yeah. And if you take the bodies out there, the Cornet or the IFMA or the RICS, so name them, everybody will come out with a different directive, different standard, different policies. But it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, what we want is to guide our clients toward the solution which is best suited to their business, their people. And they're paying attention to what is out there on the market, but they fall back on their own approach, their own guide, their own policies, their own standard. What is missing at the moment for me, the most important which is missing, is best practice, is understanding what different industry sector pace of change and what are they implementing. Most of the question that we have is, how do I compare to my peers? Where are they going? What are they doing? So that's why we're spending a lot of time looking at what the market is doing, from creating pilots to changing their policies around work from home, to announcing a new shift towards hybrid, because none of them is into a position where they can say, this is the direction we're going to take. You know, we've analyzed everything. This is the direction we're going to take. So let's take the next, year, which I believe this is what we're into, to understand how to navigate the crisis, to understand where is that best practice, what is working and not working, and then come to a point at the end of the year where they feel like, okay, that is the direction we're going to take based on our market, analysis. So very difficult. I don't blame them because everybody is also absorbing the shock, and the professional institutions out there are also absorbing the shock, and it's extremely difficult to come up to one point of view. Because I'm doing it. I'm defining hybrid. What is hybrid? And I have 30 people involved into the discussion across my business who all give me a different definition about what is hybrid. So the one we're going to fall back on is going to be what we recommend from a business and research point of view to our corporate, occupiers. But it's tough. It's tough for everybody. So I'll stop.
We could carry this on, and I hope you will carry this on in the discussion rooms over lunch, because the direction we're going in right now is towards lunch. So a big thank you to our three panelists there. Thank you very much indeed. Nice to see that you drove that 4.5 miles, Marie, from where you were presenting before to where you are now. That was great. And then we'll be heading straight on off to lunch. And you can chat with each other or network or go in the guys' rooms as you did before. So I'll see you back here on the pyramid stage at 1:25. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin.
Thanks, guys.